Good morning, region. It is a hair before 6 o'clock here in the region. Good Monday morning to you. This is Chuck Pullen. I am in the driver's seat by myself, and Lena in our producer booth. Just us and you this morning. We're going to run through traffic and weather before we get started. So let's take our first look at traffic this morning. Things in Indiana looking pretty good. I did notice if you're over by like Ridge and Indianapolis Boulevard, they're doing some paving this morning. Got a little bit of a backup. Looks like they're trying to get that cleared up before the morning rush hour gets started. Other than that, things looking good here in the region. You've got early building traffic into the Dan Ryan. There was an earlier accident, southbound, and so you've got Gapers delays on the inbound. So it looks like the express lanes southbound were closed earlier, and so you've got very early building traffic. Dan Ryan already a parking lot pretty much the entire ride in. So using the Skyway, no help this morning. So just be prepared if you leave early to get to downtown early. Dan Ryan already a parking lot due to an earlier incident. If you happen to be listening when you get up that way, let us know what's going on. But it looks like there was some sort of earlier accident right around the Stevenson, has things all jammed up there. So expect a long commute this morning if you're heading downtown. Other than that, things looking good on 294, heading around the city, going to the airport, stuff like that. So right now we got just our major trouble spot is the Dan Ryan at the Stevenson. So you've got building traffic the whole way. Let's take our first look at weather. There you go. One of those buttons.
There we go.
That's the one.
They finally fixed the mute button. Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 64 degrees. We'll be with highs of 84 and lows of 61. We'll be having sun, followed by increasing clouds with a thunderstorm and spots from late morning on. Should be very warm today. Tonight should be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 51. Should be cooler with a shower and spots in the morning, and then clouds and sunshine in the afternoon. And then Wednesday we'll be having highs of 64 and lows of 42 with should be pretty sunny tomorrow. On Wednesday.
Fantastic. It's been a weird kind of fall. I know a lot of people enjoy. I don't know. I'm at the point where once the leaves start falling, I don't need 80 degrees anymore. So I know looks like today may be one of our last days of 80 degrees, and then things cool off later this week. So, it's no fun to go trick or treating when it's 80 degrees. I'll put it that way. So, it's time for fall to get here. I'm even though the sign still says Summer of Chuck because we haven't updated our graphics yet, I'm a fall weather guy. Lot going on this morning, a lot going on over the weekend in Chicago and Portland and all over the country. So a lot to get in. A lot going on in Indianapolis this weekend. Indianapolis was sort of the center of the news universe with that weird story we'll get into in a little bit as well. So, but the number, 219-845-1100. Bob has a meeting, so he takes the first Monday of the month off. It's basically just us. I did invite, I have a guest coming in at 7:30, Levita Sparks-Wade, whose name you may remember. She's going to come in, and we're going to talk about sort of her story a little bit, talk about what she's been going through, and we'll get caught up on that. So in the meantime, it's just us. So I don't know. I guess we could just start going through the news of the weekend on the national level. Obviously, there was a few incidents with ICE in Chicago and the Chicago police and protesters and Pritzker and there's a lot going on there, and it's sort of that escalation that I was concerned about, ever since, for instance, going back to the Charlie Kirk murder, a lot of people were saying we need to turn down the temperature, and it seems like we're doing the opposite, which is sort of to be expected. So we've got a lot going on there. So we have this story out of Indianapolis. Former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez is charged after surveillance video shows an alleged fight in downtown Indianapolis alley. That was a weird story. Again, not a sports guy, so I didn't know a whole lot about that. But Indianapolis has seen its share of violence and crime in the downtown area. So when this story came out about Mark Sanchez, it was sort of no surprise. A lot of people jumped to say, look, you're just proving once again downtown Indianapolis no longer safe for people just to kind of wander around. It's a nice area. I go down there occasionally, and you can wander around the downtown. There's a lot of different things to do. Some stuff family friendly. If you're taking your kids, you can go to the museums and stuff like that. If you're older, there's plenty to do there. But so let's get into that. So former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez was charged early Sunday morning by Marion County prosecutors for his role in a stabbing that left him seriously injured early Saturday in downtown Indianapolis. He faces misdemeanor criminal charges of battery resulting in injury, public intoxication, and unlawful entry of a motor vehicle for his role in the altercation. So the original story that came out was that he was stabbed. And of course, people kind of jumped to the conclusions that it was some sort of crime or something like that somebody stabbed him, while trying to steal his wallet or something like that. But as it turns out, the Indianapolis police were called to a pub on West Washington Street at 12:30 in the morning. When officers arrived, they found Sanchez suffering from stab wounds. So basically what it sounds like, there was a second man who was found in a nearby alley with cuts to his face. And this was a 69-year-old man that was working. He was doing, one story said he was collecting used cooking oil. Another story said he was doing food deliveries, like, dropping off food to somebody. But basically, it sounds like Sanchez engaged this person in the alley, and they were arguing about where his truck was parked or blocking the alley. And at some point, they started fighting. They started shouting at each other. Sanchez climbed inside the vehicle, and despite being told to leave, Sanchez appeared intoxicated, smelled of alcohol, and claimed to have spoken to the hotel manager, who said the truck was not supposed to be there. So basically, these two men get into a fight. One of them is Sanchez, get into a fight with an older man. The 69-year-old man told police he used pepper spray to defend himself. When Sanchez continued advancing, he thought, this guy's trying to kill me, pulled out a knife and stabbed Sanchez. So again, a weird story. And, I don't know, Lena, do you know much about, you're a football person. Do you watch much sports?
I do not.
So I don't know. I worked for Fox Sports for a while, so I met a lot of these guys working for the Chicago Bears and stuff like that. It's such a weird story that you have these guys, former NFL quarterback. You assume he's well off. He's going to be on Fox Sports on Sunday doing the Colts game. It's just kind of like one of those what goes through your mind when when you're sort of a media personality or a sports personality, like I'm going to get drunk and get in an argument with an old man in an alley. Just sort of a weird thing to hear. So it was kind of surprising when this story took that turn of events, where it went from what we thought was like a robbery to now it was basically a fight between Sanchez and this old man who was either delivering food or collecting oil. So just a weird story, and definitely sounds like alcohol was involved. No shocker there. But it did put sort of a spotlight on Indianapolis. It was national news all day yesterday. And, again, it's a thing with Indianapolis. We kind of think of it as this quiet downtown area, but it has seen its share of violence lately. I know a lot of people that I know that live there. We had Rob Kendall on recently. A lot of people that are there and go into the downtown area, they say that they've just seen an increase in crime and homelessness and things like that. So, I know our governor and lieutenant governor tweeted about it and talked about the increasing crime in Indianapolis, which they later deleted their tweets after finding out the full story. But again, it's something that you think about when you're planning on taking your family somewhere. Obviously a lot of us have reservations about taking small children or our family to Chicago for an evening, but also this idea of taking them like to Indianapolis, where they have really nice, the museums and zoos and things like that. There's a lot to do there. But it's something that you think about when you are taking, when you're going downtown or going something like that. So we have that story. And if you want to chime in on that, the number. I wanted to get into, obviously, the big news of the weekend here more locally is what's going on in Chicago with the ICE protesters. You had an altercation where a woman tried to ram, she tried to ram a ICE vehicle. So basically, this woman who was federally charged, is it Miramar Martinez, and an accomplice, Anthony Santos Ruiz. They were arrested for assaulting and impeding federal officers after allegedly ramming and boxing in Border Patrol vehicles, which they were then surrounded, and agents fired 5 shots, injuring Martinez. So, Lena, have you been following this story at all? Is this something that's been catching your attention?
I have. I've been hearing a lot about ICE in Chicago
Yeah.
recently.
So, and I know that there's some video of it, because of course there's always video from 5 different angles now whenever something like this happens, but it really was shocking to see. And I mean, again, that's one of the things about video is you see it and it's sort of, you say, okay, here's what happened, but also it can be, if people started recording later or something like that, it can also just sort of be part of the story. But, from what it looked like, this vehicle just sort of approached an ICE vehicle and sort of ran it off the road. And then their vehicle was surrounded by ICE who opened fire on them, which, again, we don't know sort of the backstory of what happened, if there was any sort of engagement prior to that. It just sort of a weird thing that somebody would see an ICE vehicle with flashing lights and go, I'm going to run them off the road. Because, again, they are federal agents, and everybody's talking about them being armed and things like that. And it's sort of just a weird thing. Apparently she was armed. But again, it's like, what are you going to do against an armed group of police officers? There's an interesting thing that's happening in addition to that. There have been discussions about whether the Chicago police have been told to stand down. So that became a second sort of a side story to this. It says the nation's largest police officer union condemned reports that Chicago officers were told not to help ICE agents surrounded by protesters, calling it a shocking violation of law enforcement's duty to protect fellow officers in danger. So this is sort of another thing, sort of another thread on this that I've been talking about for a while. Is what concerns me about the situation is you basically have officers working the same area, but not under the same command structure. So you essentially have federal agents, you have ICE agents, you could have National Guard under federal control, but then you have local police, state police under local control, and they aren't exactly working together. They actually, they're basically not coordinating. So what happens is, for instance, we saw a video of the National Guard or ICE or whoever it was deploying tear gas. The Chicago police weren't prepared for that, so they essentially got tear gassed. So again, it's this weird, complicated situation, and it really concerns me when you have these sort of tensions brewing, and now you have the two sides kind of not working together. And I know that, so for instance, there's going to be another J.B. Pritzker address today, where J.B. Pritzker is set to host a news conference to address the Trump administration's effort to militarize American cities and the current state of federal deployments to Illinois. So they are obviously, they're filing legal challenges to the deployment. There was a judge late on Sunday found that, if I understand this right, so President Trump, because he was blocked from using the National Guard in Portland, he was going to nationalize the 300 troops from California. So basically using California troops, which of course Gavin Newsom said, not happening. But President Trump wanted to use Guard troops from California and send them up to Portland. A U.S. District Judge, Karen Immergold, ruled the action was unlawful and unconstitutional, and basically issuing an emergency temporary restraining order to halt the deployment of California's National Guard to Portland. So again, sort of an interesting idea where you have the president, you have his administration saying, Chicago and Portland and cities are on fire, and the people there are saying, no, it's fine. It's not that bad. People were making memes of, a farmer's market in Portland going, oh, look, the city's on fire. So it's, again, an interesting thing where you have local officials saying, things are fine, we don't need you, and the president insisting on sending troops. I just go back to my original statement, which is if, I believe in states' rights, so if a state doesn't want your help, pull out. And I think that would be, pull out all federal resources, pull them out, and then let the state decide if they want you back in. But, it seems like if you're not wanted there, then, again, elections have consequences. If people want their local government run a certain way. If people want certain things, in there, let them have it. And so that's sort of where I'm at with this. Is it's sort of an issue where President Trump is insisting on law enforcement and dealing with people that are here illegally and things like that, and then the local people are saying, no, this is our community. You're not welcome. So you said we got some calls. Why don't we take a couple calls? Let's start there. Good morning, caller. You're the first caller of the week. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Chuck. So I really didn't expect to be on the air. I was just calling with the traffic update.
Sure. Yeah, what do you got?
So, it's on 8094 westbound, right past Calumet Avenue. There's an accident. The vehicle is in the left lane in the wall, but there is debris also in the left lane. So just people be careful because it's going to slow down. I'm already at 80 now. So I passed it, but there was a truck all the way over in the right lane. So I assume it was between a vehicle and a truck.
So we've got
slowdown.
The left lane is closed right now and blocked, or is it?
No,
okay.
I'm saying the left lane is blocked.
Okay, the left lane is blocked.
The vehicle is in the shoulder,
okay.
but debris is in the left lane.
So everybody's slowing down. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
So then,
just beware.
Okay, so you're saying westbound at Calumet, and then you've got to slow down probably is it slow down starting at like the boulevard at this point? Something like that?
Yeah, it started slowing down like right past the boulevard. Everything started coming to a halt, and that's when I came up on it and saw what the issue was. So I don't know. It's probably backed up a lot more now than when I first came because it had probably just initially happened maybe a couple of minutes before I got there.
And so at that point, no police or fire on scene, so they're going to be getting there.
No, right.
Right, so they'll be closing lanes here shortly and cleaning that up. So
yes.
So expect westbound 8094 probably going to get worse before it gets better as they clean up this accident. So we'll keep an eye on that. Not even showing up on the traffic map yet, but thank you, of course, for getting to that for us, and we'll keep an eye on that. Did you want to chime in on anything else, or did you just want to drop the traffic?
No, I'll listen to you. I enjoy you because you know what? You start the week on Monday, so it's great and refreshing to hear a program where no one's complaining about Tuesday's program. So keep up the great work, Chuck.
Well, the same goes for Tuesday. Don't complain about Monday, and then we'll be in.
I don't.
You never do. So, but yeah, thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to hearing you tomorrow. So thank you for that call. We'll keep an eye on that.
Thank you, Chuck.
Hey, you have a good day. Stay safe out there.
You too.
So we're hearing from Verley, westbound 8094 at Calumet. There's a vehicle in the wall. Could be involving also a semi. So as police and everyone responds to that, expect there could be more lane closures, expect that there'll be cleanup and stuff like that. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that, and we'll let you know how that goes. But expect building traffic westbound 8094 starting at Calumet. So if you're getting on, just expect to sit in some traffic, listen to us as you head into Illinois. So do we have any other callers? You want to take another call? Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Chuck. How are you doing?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Great. You know, I see, and I try to bring things to this table that I feel many, many people miss.
Sure.
A different angle, just a different perspective. And I'm always leery, and I don't know if Verley would appreciate this. I'm always leery of the political angle of politicians when certain issues arise, i.e., locally, we had Mayor Tom McDermott Jr., who always portrays himself as pro-law enforcement. I remember when the African-American couple with the 2 children in the back seat in Hammond, Indiana, refused to get out.
Oh, in the van? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And he was going to go. He's going to fight that tooth and nail. He's pro-law enforcement. And many of us, including myself, say, okay, he seems like a different type of local elected official that's going to back his men and women in blue. Then fast forward today, whereby it seems like from a political perspective, in my opinion, the political party, primarily the Democrats nationally, are basically being taken over by the left.
Okay.
So this issue happens in Chicago, and the mayor of the city of Hammond feels it necessary to call the law enforcement people working in that city, Chicago, clowns.
Ah, yes.
I'm thinking of, I don't want to get into should they be there, am I pro National Guard, because I have problems with that. I, too, share many of your libertarian viewpoints. Okay, I want to separate that. But I just find it interesting. Has that mayor of the city of Hammond decided, I tried many, many angles to further his political career, and basically, let's face it, it's going to be Hammond, Indiana, okay? And then it's going to be on to business. That's the career. I noticed he was on the air, on his pod, talking to Jay, talking about we need to be moderate, we need to talk to each other, we need to come more to the middle. I'm just of the assumption that he's realized he's lost that argument. His party's gone at the national level. I'm not talking about you local Democrats, please. That's not my point. I believe he recognizes to hitch his future endeavors, it must be nationally, or it's got to be out of hand.
Trying to make sort of shocking things, trying to get attention, things like that. No, I get. So you're saying, and I heard this from a couple people, that he called, what did he call the National Guard or somebody? He called ICE,
the Border
clowns.
Patrol, excuse me.
Called them clowns. Okay.
Correct.
So, and I was told he called someone else clown. So I'm glad you clarified. And so, one of the things I always think about when I hear stuff like that, especially in Chicago, I've met a lot of these guys. Just like with firemen, they come from families. It's like 3 generations of police officers, and same with firefighters. I meet these guys, and even here locally, so many great guys. Hammond Fire, Mike Hall, who comes on here a lot. So many great guys and gals that just want to serve their community. And so it's sort of disappointing when you hear what's happening. But at the end of the day, I always think back to this idea that if you are a public servant, you are essentially doing the work of whatever politicians are your bosses, right? Whoever signs your paycheck. And so I was thinking back to in Chicago years ago, the Chicago police, one time they basically shut down a city council meeting and said, you don't have our backs. We don't feel that you support us. Ergo, we can't do our job. So if you have the situation where you have, the city leadership and the rank and file not agreeing on what the job is, that's where problems come in. And even now, this idea that maybe you've got, different jurisdictions, different law enforcement agencies in the same place, but not coordinating to the point where one might deploy tear gas and the other one doesn't have masks ready. At the end of the day, these are just people trying to do their jobs. Whether you agree with, I know there's been a lot of hate on people for, the ICE was offering bonuses and things like that. But at the end of the day, I think all of these people have the same sort of goal, which is to serve their community and then get home safely to their families, right? I mean, At the end of the day, I think regardless of that, and going to your point, one of the things that we're seeing about the politicking, and I've said this over and over again, is you've got President Trump, who obviously he's a very, he's very outspoken. He doesn't, you never have to wonder what his thoughts are. But then also on the other side, you have J.B. Pritzker, who, again, a guy who's probably has his sights on running for president here. And so you have 2 guys that basically know they're under the microscope because, JB has to hold a certain position and Trump has to hold a certain position. And the problem is they're so far apart right now that at no point are these 2 guys going to get together and go, look, we disagree on, what's happening with immigration or something like that. But at the end of the day, we got to keep people safe. This idea that people are ramming ICE vehicles. ICE is, ICE arrested a Chicago councilwoman. At a certain point, these guys need to put this aside and go, hey, can we at least find some common ground? But the problem is their parties would attack them, and it would probably affect J.B. Pritzker negatively with his party if he comes out and says, hey, I'm going to work with Trump and try to find a solution. He can't say that right now if he plans to run for president, and that's unfortunate.
Right. And isn't it unfortunate the pawns in all of this are us? the citizens of the United States of America. And all it winds up becoming is how political elite individuals could progress their career. That's all it's about. No matter what we say, we could argue all day long on these airways, and we could avoid subjects, and certain hosts will talk about it. This one will get mad at this one, then they'll both get mad at the callers. But my focus is always on the self-centered elected officials. Please pay attention to that, because locally, Prosecutor Brown, Carter, back the mayor, showed up when people were not supporting him. Then, he may run against Carter. Fast forward, the Evan Bay's in town. Let's show a picture of Evan's son and Evan Bay outside of El Taco Royale and Hammond. Well, I can remember back when Mayor McDermott was unhappy with Evan Bay for ditching the Democrat Party at the national level. But see, now it can, opportunity. See, I'm always seeing the angle. What is the angle of, I'm going to show up as a former governor in the city of Hammond with my son, who, by the way, this young man may be an elected, potential great elected official for the future. And then all the local people get all happy because, their guys may have a potential to win a certain office. And I just see the game. I see the game go over and over. And then the full outrage. One elected official, they're angry at each other. Case in point, the Bada situation. Right. They were all in love with each other. All of them, all of these feuding people. Because I was in the audience when our former governor at the time was speaking and told us to our face, you're entitled to all the bloated government you want to pay for. And I specifically remember seeing the mayor and our present congressman sitting together, they're good old buddies, and I could mention other names, and they were outraged. How dare you tell us the truth? Which I was never offended by it. It was the truth. Now, fast forward, when those political powers, they sort of separated, now they're all enemies. Spadastado, same scenario. They were all good buddies, and I could mention some labor officials as well. These were all, they're all in love with each other. They're all in, and then when the political scenario falls apart, now they're bitter. And then you got your little soldiers on the side. Oh yeah, I'm with this guy. I'm against this guy. Do you hear it on the radio? Oh, that former guy, he's horrible. 2 weeks from today, all those good people could be in line, and they'll all say how wonderful they all are. And no one has the guts to point out their hypocrisy. Our country is basically bankrupt, but all they care about is their next political move. And it doesn't matter which party they are. It doesn't matter. That's why I so appreciate mayors such as Mayor Copeland. He worries about East Chicago. As a matter of fact, people say, why doesn't he get involved in this and that and the other? If I was a 65, 67-year-old guy and I lived in the city of East Chicago and I knew that's where I was going to die, guess what? That's where I want you to concentrate your powers. Not what's your next political gig. And I see it, man. I see it. I just think Mayor wants to get the heck out of Hammond, okay? That's basically it.
Right. Well, again, like I said, we see the same thing with J.B. Pritzker. Is obviously he's campaigning. So, yeah. So, okay. Yeah, completely agree. And so I appreciate the call. We do have to take a break. Yeah, no, all valid points. And, again, it's sort of, that's like you said, the hypocrisy of sort of politics is that you have to essentially, you're picking a side, and regardless of, you really can't criticize your side. And I think that's where a lot of these issues come in at is, we can't, what I always talk about is the sides, you need to be your harshest critic. You need to constantly be looking at what are we doing, and is it the right thing for the people? And I think far too often, to his point, is it's not about the people. It's about what the party wants or what our needs are or what we're trying to do to push an agenda forward. And the people are getting lost in that. And that's something we'll definitely get into today in the show, is because regardless of your opinion on what's happening in Chicago or something like that, there are people that are losing their lives. There are people that are losing their children. And, if you're not there, I spent a lot of time as a journalist. I spent a lot of time going to churches and working with churches in Chicago. I was working with a church recently. They had a drive-by shooting as Bible class was letting out on a Friday night. So again, for us, we're sort of removed from this violence, and it's easy to say, well, it's not that bad, but it's hard to say that to somebody who just lost a child over the weekend in a senseless killing. Well, it's not that bad. We're sorry you lost your child, but things aren't that bad. And so that's one of the things I really look at is, who has skin in the game here, and it's the people who are affected by the violence, not the people that are sort of far removed from it. So why don't we take a break? We'll be back with more Summer of Chuck, even though it's fall. So the Summer of Chuck in the fall, because we haven't updated our graphic. Summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo here on WJOB. .633 in the region. let's take a look at, we got some traffic to take a look at, so I want to make sure that we're keeping up on that. So Verley called earlier to tell us about an accident westbound 8094 at Calumet. You had a vehicle into the wall. You had a truck on the shoulder. It sounds like there was, the two of those got tangled. Police and fire are on the scene. So you've got a backup from Calumet all the way to basically to the boulevard at this point. So expect if you're heading westbound on Calumet, you'll be on the brakes from the boulevard to Calumet. There was an earlier incident, Dan Ryan inbound at the Stevenson. So traffic building early on the Dan Ryan. Dan Ryan already a parking lot from downtown all the way to the Bishop Ford. So expect traffic if you're trying to get into the city early. Expect things heavier than usual due to an earlier incident at the Stevenson. Let's take a look at weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 66 degrees with highs of 84 and lows of 61. We'll be having sun followed by increasing clouds with thunderstorm in some spots from late morning on. Should be very warm today, and tonight should be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow on Tuesday we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 51. Should be feeling a little bit cooler with a shower in some spots in the morning and then clouds and sunshine in the afternoon. And then Wednesday we'll be having highs of 64 and lows of 42, and it should be pretty sunny.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we just, Evan Bai's name got mentioned in the last segment. We do have some breaking news from downstate. This is from about a half hour ago. Evan Bai tweets or posts, "I'm proud to announce that my son Bo filed his candidacy for Indiana Secretary of State, a seventh-generation Hoosier Marine Corps infantry captain, Harvard graduate, and attorney. Bo will bring new leadership to an office that desperately needs it. Even more, he'll endeavor to begin healing our broken political system by emphasizing unity, not division, progress, not partisanship, and common sense, not extreme ideology." So that comes from Evan Bai announcing his son Bo is running for Secretary of State. Again, if you were listening when Rob Kendall was on, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of criticism downstate of Diego Morales, of his travel expenses and going to India. And so interesting to see that Bo Bai has announced his candidacy for Indiana Secretary of State as a Democrat. It will be an interesting race, but again, Evan Bai, I would say for the most part, remembered fondly here in Indiana. The Bai name, is sort of a name that carries some weight, so it'll be interesting. Definitely going to make that Secretary of State's race interesting and one to keep an eye on. So why don't we take some calls? Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Last week I was watching one of my favorite travel shows on public television. It's called Travel Detectives.
Okay.
And pardon?
I said, okay. Sounds good. Okay. Sounds interesting.
Well, in any case, they wrapped up the show with a final question. Which cities in America are the most rat-infested?
And I remember at one point Chicago was the most rat-infested, but isn't Portland or Seattle one of the most rat-infested? I forget. But yeah, tell us what were their findings? Go ahead.
Number one list is Chicago.
Right. 2,
L.A., 3 is New York City, and 4 is District of Columbia.
Interesting.
What do they have? What do they all have in common?
Lots of restaurants and lots of good food.
How about the political affiliation? Domination.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is one that I don't think we can blame on the Democrats, Walt. Like, I get the rat problem. I mean, it's in, even in Chicago, it's, they used, they've tried all sorts of interesting things. They tried, they had the coyotes downtown, and they've tried all these different ways. They have a rat patrol. They do all these things, but I mean, ultimately, I think it's just, I like Walt. One of the things when I first went to Times Square, I hadn't ever been to New York. I went to New York a few years ago. I was amazed at the idea that there was just garbage everywhere, right? One of the things that Chicago is better at than New York is there's no we have alleys, we have dumpsters. You go to New York, there's just literally, piles of garbage right there on the side. So I get why like New York has garbage, but I think Chicago has done, they do a good job. I mean, to somebody who's downtown, yeah, I see rats occasionally, but they try, but it's just, it's a tough thing to deal with.
Well, there are other things they have in common. One is that they're all in financial difficulties. Another thing they have in common is they've got out-of-control crime. And they have police departments that are grossly understaffed because as a result of their the way they reacted to the Black Lives Matter insurrection back in 2020. Instead of listening to their police and business community, asking them to call up the National Guard to back up the cops, they refused. In Chicago, Lightfoot responded by saying no, because it would make matters worse. And of course, what resulted was three flows of violence. One alone resulted in destruction or damage of 1,000 businesses in Chicago. And of course, the numbers of cops in Chicago is down, but most importantly because a lot of the most experienced policemen, they left. They saw the handwriting on the wall. Why stick around with a bunch of yahoos running the city like this? And there's no end in sight. And so Chicago citizens are left with a police force that's not only undermanned, but inexperienced,
right? Well, and so,
Yep.
let's talk about the budget a little bit, because I know a lot of people don't focus on things like that, and I know it's something you and I talk quite a bit about, budgets and deficits and things like that. So, so Chicago is facing; they have to close a more than $1 billion budget gap in 2026. So again, what's the very first line of every article I find about this? Mayor Johnson should consider raising garbage and rideshare fees, hiking the liquor tax, extending the hiring freeze, tying property tax increases to inflation. So again, the reaction is always raise taxes, and then at the end, well, maybe we should also cut some, do some cost cutting measures, but inevitably, and again, they're always
evil.
Well, right, and so that becomes the problem, is that you have this is the inherent issue with government, is they are promising everybody everything, and they can't afford it. And then when you start talking about, and that's one of the things when you see these new taxes, it's always taxes that disproportionately hurt poor in the middle class. When you talk about raising gas taxes, cigarette taxes, liquor taxes, ride share fees, people that don't have a car and they need to use Uber to get to work. All of these taxes disproportionately affect poorer people. And yet, again, like we were talking earlier, they just don't seem to have a voice in this to say, look, we can't afford more taxes on all of our daily living. And what does it do? That's how Northwest Indiana continues to grow at this insane pace, because people are fleeing high taxes.
Well, there's yesterday's Times. There was a very good editorial addressing a point that I have talked about more than once over WJOB, and that is this accumulated $37 trillion debt and how dangerous it is.
The Times wrote about the debt? I am absolutely shocked.
Well, here it is. Our fiscal space is gone. Now what? Fiscal space is the flexibility to continue borrowing to support our deficits and debt. For now, the United States still has that flexibility. However, the day is fast approaching when that portion will vanish. When it does, chaos will follow, problems beyond our imagination, problems that this country has never witnessed before.
So one of the problems, Walt, is that we only really talk about the debt when there's a government shutdown. And what happens is, whichever party's in the White House, it's the other party that basically says, look what they've done. Not look what we've done over 50 years. Look what President Trump has done. He's created this debt, and it's a failure of the other party. Neither party, when they have the ability to do something about the debt, actually does something about it. And that's why, again, I always joke, Walt, that I've been on these airwaves for about $18 trillion. And the whole time you and I have been saying we need to cut spending. We need to curb all this. And it's never happened. Right. And that's one of the things that I hear from a lot of people, Walt, that don't understand the debt, is that they always say, well, what does it matter? Who do we owe this money to? And I say, well, it doesn't even matter so much as the debt itself, but it's the service on the debt, basically the interest that is now our single largest line item of the U.S. budget is just paying interest on this debt. And so, and that continues to grow. And the thing about debt is it's a spiral. It grows exponentially. And so as we continue to not address the debt, as we continue to pass continuing resolutions and omnibus budgets and not really cut the debt, it just gets the service gets worse every year. And that's one of the things I think that these people don't understand is the people that want stuff, whether you want free health care, you want free college, a lot of that could be found if we weren't spending over $1 trillion of our $7 trillion budget on interest on this debt. And there's no scenario where we tax our way out of this. And I think that's one of the things people continue to say, well, Elon and Bill Gates or whoever should pay that debt. Like, that's not happening, and you're not going to tax the rich enough to fix this problem.
Nope.
And so that's the problem, is we're not yet at a point where people are coming together and saying, okay, we get it. We need to cut spending. There's no more taxing our way out of it. Chicago is a perfect poster child of this idea of let's tax our way out of it, and then we just end up in more debt because we haven't cut the spending.
What I find amusing is a standard propaganda line by the Democrats is we need to force the rich to pay their fair share of the taxes.
Right.
What? One, what do you think is the fair share? Two, don't you understand that when it comes to federal income taxes, that the upper 50% of the income makers in this country, they're paying essentially 100% of the bill.
Right. They pay most of it, and you pay a small portion of it. But again, going back to like the policies of like FDR, they believe that Elon Musk should be paying 80%. They believe that Elon Musk,
yes,
who mainly his wealth is tied up in his Tesla stock, the man who is not really liquid, most of his money is tied up in stock. They think that he should be forced to basically sell it because they don't understand. They don't understand the difference between liquid and wealth. He's wealthy in the sense that he owns
stock. Explain to the
audience
what liquid means.
Right. Well, I mean, basically liquid, that's sort of the running joke is I say, there's these articles about how Elon will soon be worth $1 trillion. He doesn't have a stash of cash underneath his bed. That is tied directly to the success of Tesla, right? He owns Tesla stock. And as the face of Tesla, if he started selling his shares, what happens? Everybody goes, uh-oh, why is Elon selling his shares? And that's bad for his company. So the fact that he sits on all of those shares speaks volumes for, what he believes in his company. And that's sort of the problem, is that goes back to that argument they had years ago, Walt, with realized and unrealized gains. And that's sort of the thing, is that these people believe that Elon literally has like a giant bin of money somewhere that he goes swimming in every day. And they don't understand the difference between wealth and liquid assets. Elon does not have that. So that's sort of that problem is, tax the rich. Like, well, the rich don't have money sitting around like that. This, again, and it's a hard thing to explain to people that have been hammered with this rhetoric of tax the rich and it's Elon's problem. Elon writes a $15 billion check and they go, well, that's not enough. He should be writing a bigger check. It's like, well, Elon doesn't have $15 billion in cash. He had to sell stock just to pay his taxes, which is insane. So, but again, that's something that you and I have hammered on these airways for years, Walt. And, I feel like we're still spinning our wheels.
We'll be going to our grave on that one.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. If I go to my grave, at least seeing I guess here's the question, Walt. Do you expect in your lifetime to see the federal government passing a balanced budget?
No.
And I would be shocked if I see it in my lifetime. But again, there's a certain point where we're at $37 trillion. That's $1 trillion in debt service. As that debt grows, the debt service grows. And again, you can't tax your way out of it. So there's going to be a day of reckoning. And I hope it's sort of that, again, like Jerome Powell talks about sort of the soft landing. I hope that there's a soft landing, but my hopes for that are fading as time goes on. Every time we have a government shutdown and no discussion about cutting spending, it just, that idea of a balanced budget gets further and further out of reach. So, But Walt, I always appreciate the call. I appreciate your wisdom on these things. So again, Walt and I could spend hours talking about debt and things like that. But you've heard it all before, but it doesn't change. So thank you for the call, Walt. Appreciate it. Do we have some other calls? You got more calls? Okay. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Clown.
Who's a clown? You call me a clown? Who are you talking about? Who are you calling a clown?
Well, I hope Mike is listening. He's all wrong about his thoughts.
Okay.
Why Mayor McDermott called police clowns, okay? The reason why Mayor McDermott is using the clown word is because this is all Sam Michael's fault.
Of course it is. That's exactly what I thought. Go ahead.
Sam Michael called McDermott a clown.
Okay.
And now McDermott can't quit using the word. So Sam Michael needs to come back in and reset this whole thing and call McDermott something else because he was really hurt that he was called a clown. Now, see, Mike, you're trying to all these political angles. Hold on, I got a cough. This is a Coke plant. At least you know I work for a living, right? Now, if Sam Michael didn't call McDermott a clown, McDermott wouldn't be calling police a clown. Now, Sam has to come in and apologize, or at least call McDermott something else.
So here's the thing. Sam was the smartest one of all of us. He just kind of walked away from this and said, I'm sticking to sports, and I'm not going to get mixed up in this fray. And, I talk to Sam occasionally. I'm like, don't you miss all this? And he goes, no, I don't miss it at all. I don't miss all these arguments and having the same arguments, the same debates over and over again about these things. But interesting point. You're right. Sam did call him a clown, but so
certain things bother me, Chuck.
No, I get it. Go ahead.
I was out Friday night, and I'm not going to call McDermott a clown like Sam Michael did, but in Hammond.
That's good because I thought you guys made up, so I'm glad you don't call him a clown.
We're at a truce right now.
Good,
I got what I wanted.
Yeah, that's something. That's how
an activist works. Right. I got what I wanted.
Right.
We shook hands and it's over. But I just wanted to clear it up for Mike because it's like the fourth time he called trying to find out the political angle. And Mike, I like your calls. I listen very closely. You need to call back and say, oh, yeah, that's right. Sam Michael called McDermott a clown, and McDermott can't quit using that word. Now, I was by Morton High School Friday night. I've seen some of the scariest, and I went there back in 1974, right? And I've reached 50 years from when I hired an Inland Steel in 1975. I know everybody doesn't want to hear that, but I still love Morton High School, and I've seen this big gathering. And I see the police there. And so I go, and a lot of police. So I go get something to eat. And a guy tells me that they had police there before. I said, man, what are they fighting about? Yeah, I guess it's over, football and parents. And they were going to shut down the football games because it's too dangerous. You can't have that much of a mob and have 3 hard-working police. I love the police. I call them enough. They know who I am. And then in Whiting, when you're the mayor and you're kind of like got police protection, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. When you refer to what Sam Michael uses that word clown, and then you ask for police protection. Okay, now let's forget all about that. Now, Mike, I want you to call in and say, "Oh, MX, you're right again." And Sam Michael's probably laughing. But it's not funny, Sam. You walked away and you left us with this big mess, and you hurt his feelings really, really bad. And me and McDermott shook hands, and we made up, and that's it. Okay, I got what I wanted. But what Jed don't understand when Dave called in is my father, if I mess, of course, I have $500 and he gave me $200 for a brand new Harley Davidson Baja in 1972. It was a really good dirt bike. But if my grades weren't up, he told me He was smashed by a dirt bike. But I don't know how we got into that. But what bothers me is when you think 58 people shot and 8 fatally. Now, 58 people shot is a lot of people.
So that's the count from this weekend, basically Friday to this morning, is 58 and 7. 58 shot.
No.
Go ahead.
The MX Bingo, that was July 4th weekend.
This
but
July
the MX
4th.
Bingo,
Okay, I was going to say that's a lot for this weekend. Okay. But again,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, dozens of people whose lives were altered, families whose, children aren't coming home. And so that's sort of, again, going back to where we start at is ask these people, ask these 58 families who had someone shot, how is crime in Chicago? And that's sort of the thing is I'm out here in the suburbs, Trump is surrounded by security. J.B. Pritzker is surrounded by security. Their children protected by security. It's easy to say, yeah, it's not that bad when it's not your family that has to bury a loved one.
If I had a show, which I can't, because I was the shortest, Kuzak, I hope you're listening. I was the shortest host ever. But I would come in the clown outfit to try to make things right. You know what I mean? Because that Sam Michael, he off running. But I'm trying to tell you something, Chuck. Now that we got the shot spotter, a lot of people were under fire. And now we know that the people ain't lying. So, when you're under fire, and a lot of people want the National Guard, and you got to put up with these other people ramming you, you're risking your life to save other people's lives. And then, clown.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna go around. I'm gonna roll down my window. Clown.
Well,
now you got me saying it. Clown.
So, Lena, if a clown happens to show up outside the window, just call the police. A clown. Now, I expect a clown on a dirt bike to come riding through the studio at any time now.
Clown. I gotta go, but Mike's got to call back, and he's got to quit calling in the political angle. No, Mike, and I love you to death. This is Sam Michael. Clown!
So
right,
I'm going to tell Sam Michael this is all his fault. So, okay, on that note, let's take a break. Let's kind of regather ourselves, recombobulate after all that. So we'll be back with more Summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo here on WJOB. Hey, it's 7:01 in the region. You're listening to the Summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo, here on a beautiful Monday morning on WJOB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM in beautiful Hammond, Indiana. We do have traffic to talk about, so we'll be keeping an eye on the roads this morning. So we had an earlier accident. Thanks to Verley for letting me know about this accident. Westbound 8094 at Calumet, there was an early accident involving possibly a truck and a car. The car was in the wall on the inside on the left lane, so we had earlier lane closures. Looks like that's clearing up a little bit, but you are going to hit some traffic, say from the Boulevard to Calumet on westbound 8094. There was an earlier incident. Dan Ryan at the Stevenson has got things pretty backed up. Traffic got heavy early on the inbound Dan Ryan. So you've got Dan Ryan basically from the Stevenson all the way to the Bishop Ford. So plan on sitting in some traffic once you hit the Dan Ryan pretty much the whole way. Skyway not really going to save you this morning. Most of the backup is after the Skyway on in to downtown. So you got that going. Other than that, on the Illinois side, things looking good. 294 going around the city. You've got that usual slowdown in the construction zone right at about, 55. Things looking good here in Indiana other than that earlier accident. Westbound 8094 at Calumet. And so I want to give you a shout out because we not only started early, we're hitting our breaks. We're actually running this like a real radio show, and I don't know how I feel about it. It's like we're actually like taking breaks and doing we're doing what the boss wants. So I mean, I enjoy that you're keeping us on task. So tell us about the weather.
Morning, everyone. Today we're at 65 degrees with highs of 84 and lows of 61. We'll be having some sun followed by increasing clouds with a thunderstorm in some spots from late morning on. Should be very warm today, and later tonight should be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow on Tuesday we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 51. Should be feeling much more cooler with a shower in some spots this in the morning, and then clouds and sunshine in the afternoon. And then Wednesday, we'll be having highs of 64 and lows of 42 with nothing but sunshine.
Fantastic. So we've got sort of the last day of unseasonably warm weathers. I think my wife's phone mentioned that thing that you mentioned last week, the abundance of sunshine. I go, okay, this may be the last day of an abundance of sunshine. Then it will feel more appropriate for fall-like weather, more like soup weather, as Bob Starkey would say. So we've got... later on, in about a half hour, we've got Levita Sparks-Wade coming on. She's got a story to tell, and she was kind enough. She said, I want to tell it on your show. So she's going to come in a little bit later. We're going to hear her story and kind of hear about what's been going on in her life, hear her side of what you've read about in the papers and things like that. So it'll be interesting to hear from her in a little bit. But in the meantime, it's just us till 7:30. So if you got anything that you want to chime in on, 219-845-1100. We've been talking about obviously the ICE and National Guard and all this stuff going on in Chicago and Portland. We've been talking about the incident that took place in Indianapolis. With former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez, where there was an allegation that originally it was that he was stabbed, and then later on the story came out that he basically got into a fight with an older gentleman because his truck was blocking an alley. They got into a fight. Sounds like alcohol was involved. They were both injured, and so Mark Sanchez was charged early yesterday morning for his role in a stabbing that left him seriously injured Saturday night in downtown. So he's basically in town to cover the Colts game yesterday and got into a fight with an older guy. Very, very strange story, and more will come out about that. In the meantime, let's take some calls. So good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, Mr. Chuck. Can you hear me okay?
I can. How are you this morning?
Yeah. Is it okay if I make one teeny tiny song request from a movie?
Here's the problem. We're on YouTube now, so we don't get to play songs anymore.
Well, I heard that, but I wasn't sure if Tom DeFermant was kind of fibbing me. You know?
No, so if we play somebody else's music on YouTube, we'll get a strike, and we don't want that. So.
Yeah, but this I was telling Miss Andrina last Thursday. This song is more than 50 years old, so it should be, what is that word?
Public domain.
Public domain,
right?
Yeah, you played it last time with me when you were on, and Verley and Adriana. You played the you played the beginning of the song, but as soon as the words came out, then that was it. Can I tell the name of the song anyway?
Yeah, you can tell the name for sure. Yeah.
Okay, it was that from the Errol Flynn movie, 1940, The Seahawk, Strike for the Shores of Dover. You know, it goes, where we go when we don't know, strike for the shores of Dover, onto the sea, you and me, strike for the shores of Dover, here we go for home, sweet home. Then you hear cymbals in the background, then you hear the musical version of it. I'm reading the book, Earl Flynn and Me by his second wife, Nora Ellington. Cost me $22. I'm reading it for the second time, but it's almost falling apart on me.
Well, so if you read it twice, and you got your money's worth.
It's like a year younger than the book was printed in 1960. It's sort of came out the year after I was born. You sure you can't play that song?
What we can do is maybe at 8:30, maybe if we wrap up early, we can play it after we're off YouTube. So stick around. You got to listen to the whole show, and we'll see if we can get your request in at 8:30. How about that?
Yeah, the whole song, you know, Strike for the Shores of Dover.
maybe we'll do that.
You still never saw that Earl Flynn movie, The Dark Adventure. Then when it came on the other side of the pond to the U.S., it was titled The Warriors. That was Earl Flynn's last swashbucklers movie. You never saw that, right?
I don't think I've seen some of his movies. I've not seen that one, so I'm going to put that on my list.
Oh, that was a good one. I brought that VHS, and then I had to sing around for 8 months, and then when I put it on, the picture wasn't good. Then I finally got the regular DVD, but I was so disappointed the movie trailer wasn't it. Okay, well, anyway, Strike for the Shores of Dover, Earl Flynn, Seahawk, 1940. If it's possible, you could play that whole song, okay?
We're going to put it in, and we'll play it at 8:30 once we get clear of being on YouTube. How about that?
Okay, I'll be listening. Okay,
thanks you take care.
Have a rest of a safe day. Remember, safety first. Bye.
Safety first. Thank you. I appreciate that. Go ahead. We got another caller. Good morning, caller in here.
Yeah, hey, I got some breaking news. Disney is looking to reboot Snow White again and adding an eighth dwarf.
Okay.
Yes, and they're going to be cast calling here in Northwest Indiana, and they're looking for a dwarf, someone to play the new eighth dwarf, Gropey.
Okay.
Do you know anybody from Griffith or anything like, in that area?
Do I know somebody who could
would be perfect for that cast?
Cool.
Casting for Gropey.
Who could allegedly be playing that role?
Well, I think he'd be perfect, allegedly or not.
Okay, so Disney is looking for a new dwarf, allegedly named Gropey. Yeah. So we'll have to.
Yeah.
Open casting calls, but you probably shouldn't. I don't even want to go there, but.
Well, it's all allegedly.
It's all allegedly, yes. Allegedly, Gropey, the dwarf. So.
Yes. Have a lovely day.
Thank you for that. Thank you for keeping it clean. I wasn't sure where we're going with that. So, if what's that term the kids say? If you know, you know. We'll just leave it at that. Do you have any other calls? You got one more call? Okay. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Chuck.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I've been good. How have you been?
Wonderful. And I'm not like on X and Facebook and all this stuff.
Good for you. It's good for your mental health. Stay clear of all that.
Thank you. And I don't really use those phones either. I have a flip phone that one of my elder coworkers gave me, and I don't even know the phone number, but it's for emergencies. No TV here either for probably 15 years now.
You're probably the healthiest.
3 times a year.
Probably the healthiest listener I have.
The brain good. But I do go and research and listen to different podcasts and news things on the Internet. And, wow, someone took over as #1 news provider, and they took over X. X was #1, they say. And, again, I'm not high-tech. I'm not sure how all this works with these apps. But I think it's the Alex Jones Network is #1 news source in the world.
See, I thought you were going to say it was TikTok.
Oh, please. I don't do that either.
Because every time I talk to these kids, I remember when DJ Matt was in the producer booth, every time I'd mention something in the news, he'd say, I was on TikTok and I saw this story. I go, let me stop you right there, Matt, because we're getting your news from TikTok. But
yeah, no, they had some headline somewhere. I saw that. So there you go.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's so much.
There's a lot of news going on, huh?
Right. I mean, even
maybe
this.
People are onto it's the highest one now.
Well, even like this story about CNN is what were they doing? They were going to a streaming platform. So CNN will soon leave HBO Max. So when the sort of the evolution of things is people used to have cable, you'd watch CNN, Fox News, whatever, and then people went to streaming services. So people like CNN realized, hey, if we're going to stick around, we got to move to the streaming platform. So CNN apparently was on HBO Max, and now they're going to be cutting ties with HBO Max to have their own streaming platform. But again, the numbers for cable news have just been abysmal lately. CNN's numbers are way down. I mean, again, just people are just tuning out of cable news, and I think it's just
stream is dead.
Well, and so I think it's just a lot of that. We spent so many years just being hammered with these stories, and it was always breaking news. We've got news alerts, and I mean, it was really just, it was messing with people's minds. It was, you sit there and watch the news, and there's all these alerts coming across the screen. Your blood pressure would go up, and during COVID, we had death counts and all these things, and I think people just got burned out. I mean, it's, you basically said, look, like you said, we just
it's
cut
lies,
out.
And the greatest sin I've always said, and even on these airwaves of the media, is omission.
Right.
Or you do get some hosts who do the block and bridge, tactic of media where someone asks a question and, oh, boy, I don't think my guest is going to like this question here. And then they kind of twist things around and let's do this or, I mean, the media does not want the truth on their airwaves, the mainstream.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to the idea of the media does not trust you to come to conclusions. So, that's one of the goals is always just, here's the story as we know it. And again, I'm sitting here in the region. I can't tell you like what happened in Indianapolis or what's happening in Chicago. I rely on other people. And thanks to, social media, we get to see video of what happened. We can make our own decisions. But a lot of what's happening is essentially, instead of saying, here's what happened, you get to decide your opinion. It's, we're going to tell you our opinion first. And then if you read the whole story, if you stick around long enough, we'll tell you the details at the very end.
Yes, you're correct. And most people, Chuck, they cannot read,
the majority of people,
say 500 words or something. They stop after a couple paragraphs.
Right. The majority of people don't read beyond the headline or the first paragraph. So again, if you're only going to read that first paragraph, what do I want to do? I want to give you my opinion. I want to tell you what I want you to think in that first paragraph, in that headline. And then the rest will be, forgotten about.
I like the facts. I like people who bring the receipts,
Well, and that's the thing. It's always difficult. One of the things I've always said is, far too often, one of my criticisms when I talk to people in media, I said, if you're going to talk about, if you're going to say this person said this, give me that clip. If you're going to talk about a study, give me the study. There's always things a new study says this, a new study said that. Well, where's the study? Because I want to read it for myself. I'm a smart enough person. I can read your study and decide if I come to the same conclusion you do. But far too often it is, hey, here's a study. We're not going to show you the study. We're just going to tell you, take our word for it. Here's what the study says, right? So far too often, that's what we see in the media. So, but that's why, here on Summer of Chuck, here on Monday, we try to at least just give you, here's what's going on, here's what we know, and you get to make the decisions. So,
yeah, you do a great job
Thank you. That's all I can do, right?
You have a wonderful day.
Hey, you too. Thank you for
out
calling.
here, but I thought I'd squeeze that in. So, actually, X is taken over for number one news source.
Well, it's interesting.
I was amazed. I didn't think anyone would beat X.
Yeah, well, and that's an interesting thing. I'm have to look into that. We'll talk about that maybe next week a little bit.
Awesome.
But it is interesting. I mean, even Lena, I don't know. How do you feel like you get your news these days? Do you? I mean,
I search for my own.
Okay. Well, hey,
I do not turn Fox or CNN or any of this. I haven't for years. It's all bought and paid for, and I think even, all these shows, night shows, they're all given talking points by this one or that side or this side, I don't like that, I'd rather watch someone who brings receipts and several different options for that and then check the receipts too, right?
Right, absolutely. So, hey, appreciate the call.
You take care. Have a great week, Chuck.
Okay, so Lena, same question to you. What are your thoughts? I mean, as far as how are young people consuming the news in your mind?
Well, the way I get my news, I get it two ways. It's either the Google mobile app with the cards that it shows in the beginning, or you're going to be mad at this TikTok. Yeah.
There's nothing, so this becomes that interesting discussion. There's nothing wrong with getting your news from TikTok, but then there's all these discussions about, TikTok and China and who's going to control TikTok. I think there was, who is it we're talking about now? Is it Oracle? It is supposed to be running TikTok at some point. I'm trying to see. Let me see the latest. Is it Larry Ellison? I think it was. So again, even the idea of who controls. Have you ever heard much about algorithms and things like that? The idea of. So here, let me pull this up real quick. So we're talking about TikTok. So the new U.S. TikTok owner funded Tony Blair and ensured Marco Rubio's loyalty to Israel. That comes right off Reuters. I mean, the very first thing we find is they talk about the TikTok owner. So basically talking about Larry Ellison's ties to Israel and all these things. And so that becomes this idea is when you have social media, you have these algorithms and they can basically push you in certain directions. They can make sure that you see certain kinds of stories. They can make sure that you see stuff that you agree with, or they can make you see stuff that you don't agree with. And so it's interesting even seeing my friends on social media say, well, why am I seeing all these posts from this or that? It's like, and it's, people get into this habit of, I see a certain kind of news. I see a certain slant on my news. And then for some reason, the algorithm changes. I go, why am I seeing all this all of a sudden? It's like, well, the algorithm changed and now you're seeing that. But so that becomes an interesting question about when you're consuming news like on TikTok or Facebook or whatever, is what is the algorithm feeding you, right? I mean, and that's, or even the idea, sometimes I tell people, let's trade phones and let's see what my algorithm feeds me compared. So like, here's like, let's Google a story. I mean, it's interesting. You can someday when you're with your friends, like have them Google the story and you Google it and see your search results will be different from theirs. And again, it's all about the algorithm. So that becomes an interesting question when you talk about social media is who's controlling the algorithm and who is, because again, you don't have all day. Like if you're looking for a story, pick the story about ice or whatever, you're going to Google it. You may read the first couple stories. So the question is who's deciding what those first couple, nobody goes past the first page of Google, right? That's why I used to joke with people. I said, if you want to know the truth, Google something and go like 5 pages in, and then you'll start getting, like we're just talking about studies. Like when you're looking for studies on things, go 5 pages in and you'll start finding the actual study instead of the stories of people telling you what the story said, the story is. So why don't we do this? So Levita Sparks Wade is here. Why don't we take our break? We'll reset. We'll bring her in the studio, and we'll talk to her and hear her story. So let's do that. We'll be back with more Summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo here on WJOB. Hey, it is 7:27 here in the region. So I have Levita Sparks Wade in the house with me. Good morning.
Good morning, Chuck.
So before we get started, we do have to do the most important thing, which is tell everybody how the traffic is as they're getting to work this morning. So we had an earlier incident westbound Calumet Avenue at 8094. Looks like that for the most part is cleared up, but there may be a little residual. So basically between maybe the Boulevard and Calumet, you may have a little slowdown westbound. The big story right now is the Dan Ryan to the Stevenson. So basically the Dan Ryan to downtown. There was an earlier incident right at the Stevenson, had everything messed up. So you've got a pretty rough commute. You've got red lights the whole way up the Dan Ryan to the Bishop Ford. So if you're heading that way, it's just kind of been slow moving all morning. As far as the rest of the world, things are looking good otherwise here in Indiana. You got a little slowdown 294 around 55. Other than that, things looking good out in the traffic world. But if you see anything, you know the number. But let's take a look at weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 66 degrees with highs of 84 and lows of 61. We'll be having sun followed by increasing clouds with a thunderstorm in spots from late morning on. Should be very warm today, and later tonight should be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow and Tuesday we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 51. Should be feeling a bit cooler with a shower in some spots in the morning, and then clouds and sunshine in the afternoon. And then Wednesday we'll be having highs of 64 and lows of 42, and should be mostly sunny.
Thank you so much. So again, Levita Sparks Wade in the house. So nice to have you here.
Oh, thanks
I know
much.
We always run into each other out in the world, and I say you got to come join me sometime. And when the time was right, and you decided the time was right, and so now you're here.
Yes.
So I wanted to maybe we just start a little bit. Just tell people about your background. Tell people about your public service and all the kind of things that you've done in your life.
Okay. Well, again, most people know I was born and raised in the city of Gary, Indiana, the greatest city this side of the planet. And next to it is the second greatest city, Hammond, Indiana.
Hey, I was born in East Chicago. Don't forget us, though. Don't forget East Chicago.
You know what? I forget that you're from East Chicago because you're in Hammond so much.
I grew up right down the street.
Yes. Okay. And East Chicago as well. Matriculated through the Gary Public School System. Went on to college at Tuskegee University, the home of the famous Tuskegee Airmen.
Really? Interesting.
Absolutely. Did my undergraduate work there. Finished with a degree in political science.
Okay.
And came back home, wanted to really be a part of the community that had served me so well. I was an athlete growing up, and as you know, we're still athletes, Chuck.
Maybe you more than me.
We see each other at the bowling alley all the time. Absolutely.
Well, some people debate whether bowling is it's a few seconds of movement.
Yes, it is.
A few minutes down.
Yes, it is. So I coached volleyball at Lew Wallace for 6 or 7 years, and decided that I really want to get back into what I believe is one of my assignments here on earth, and that's in politics. I worked at the Department of Child Services for 15 years. It was there that I started going back to school and got my master's in public administration from IUN. And then I got into politics a few years later and ran for office. Actually ran for mayor as an independent. That was the first time that I ran for office. Absolutely.
It's always fun when I meet people that run independent. Like,
yes.
I want to hear your story.
You know what? And run independent, those of you who are thinking about going into politics, because you get an opportunity when you don't have the name recognition, because that was the year that Reagan was running against Karen.
Okay,
so Reagan Hatcher and Karen Freeman Wilson were running. So all of the attention was on them until the fall.
Right.
Then I get some more attention as an independent.
Well, and that's one of the things we always talk about here in the region is the election is usually,
yes.
By the time the fall comes, it's already been
over.
decided. But if we have more people, I'm meeting more people that have that mindset of run as an independent.
Yes.
It's almost like a second chance to get into the race. It gives you more time to meet people and things like that.
Absolutely, it does. And so that increased my visibility. So people were still looking at me, and I was attending meetings and whatnot. And again, I had a lot of time just watching and getting angry behind the scenes.
It's hard not to get angry when you go to the meetings, right? Yeah.
How government was actually working.
Or not working.
Or not working,
right.
Exactly. And so in 2016, I ran as ran as a Democrat in that initial election in the spring, and won as what I'm trying to say the primary, and won as 6th District Councilwoman in the city of Gary, and I served for 4 years. And the story goes on. Ran for mayor again and lost to Jerome. And that was an interesting election because during that time, when I first filed for that election, that was when I experienced domestic abuse.
Okay.
And it was because of that story that then my profile,
right.
Because what happens with domestic abuse, and this is Domestic Abuse Awareness Month,
right.
as well as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I'm a victim of both. I'm a survivor of both, a thriver of both.
Right.
And my sister, my mom, and myself all experienced, are survivors of breast cancer. And my sister and I were diagnosed, Louise, shout out, a couple days apart.
Oh, wow.
We're 10-year survivors. My mom is a 40-year survivor.
Wow.
And my sister had taken the genetic test for the BRCA gene.
Okay.
I think that's how you say it. So we're not, and it came out negative. So we do believe that it's a result of our environment.
I was going to ask about that.
Yes.
I'm hearing more and more people that grew up here.
Yes.
We have these cancer clusters.
Yes.
Again, these stories that aren't being talked about. When you meet, you might have a neighborhood where multiple people had brain tumors
right.
or breast cancer or, my mother died of uterine cancer. I mean, these cancer clusters in neighborhoods, this isn't right. This,
yes.
And again, it's something that we need to spend more time investigating.
Absolutely.
Especially, like with the lead crisis that came up a few years ago, kind of brought attention to the environment
Absolutely.
that we kind of forget about because it's under our feet, right?
Yes.
One of the things I want to mention before we get too far into this, we're doing this sort of podcast style. So we kind of decided there's so much we need to get through. So what I want to do is we're going to let Levita, we're going to talk, and then I'll take calls later. So we want to get through Levita's story, and then we can kind of take some calls. I'll take calls later. We can kind of, you guys can have your say on things. But there's so much that I wanted to get through with you.
Absolutely.
So we're just going to focus on that.
Absolutely.
So, did you kind of feel your whole life that you wanted to be kind of a public servant? Was that something that you always had that calling?
From 6th grade, Sherman Newell's 6th grade social studies class at Edison Middle School.
Yeah.
He had us to do the who, what, when, where, why of current events.
Okay.
And we would have to cut out articles. And I actually remember Zbigniew Brzezinski. Who was in the cabinet. Exactly. He was in the cabinet. You might
I think I'm going to know this one.
Okay. He was in Jimmy Carter's cabinet.
Right.
Okay. And his daughter is now on Morning Joe.
Okay.
Okay. Can't remember her first name, but she's Brzezinski as well.
Okay.
And but that is what from 12 years old, being exposed to the news and understanding what was going on in the world, what was going on in the state, what was going on in my local community is what triggered me to go into.
And you mentioned, if you were listening earlier, we were talking about sort of how young people are getting their news from TikTok. And it's interesting to think about, you grew up, reading the paper and watching the news, and now the next generation, they're getting hit with these TikTok, the doom scrolling as they call it. They're getting hit with a different version of news, and it really makes me wonder. I always say, obviously you get to a point like it's not about me anymore, it's about the next generation.
Right.
And I really think about the next generation, the ones that'll be running for politics,
Absolutely.
running the world. How did they grow up, and how do they, how are they consuming news? What are they being told? And sort of the reoccurring theme here on my show has always been, there's two sides of the story. There's the story that you read, there's the story you read in the newspaper, and then there's the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I've said from the beginning, one of the things that got me into this was, like you said, I'd go to these meetings, I'd go to these events, and then I'd read about it the next day and say, I don't think they're at the same meeting I was at.
Yes, exactly,
right?
exactly.
And so it really made me realize that there's more to the story. And if you just, we were just talking about how most people just read the headline, they read that first paragraph, they're never going to get the story.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
And so there's so much more to it. It's so much more in depth. There's some people that just don't have the time or the interest. That's fine. You want to read a headline and move on. There's some people that want to know the full story.
Right.
And that's why we're here. That's why we have, this access here on the radio where we can sit and talk and bring people in like yourself that have interesting stories and find out more about it.
And thank you so much, Chuck, for having me on. You have always been kind. We've always been cordial. And whether or not we agreed when we came to the end of our conversation,
right,
we were still friends with each other.
Right.
And so it's important that people with differing opinions have a civil discourse.
Right.
Versus an uncivil one.
And one of the things I always tell people, I said, I get bored of talking to people that look like me.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that story before, right? And so I always like to bring on people that don't look like me, haven't had the same.
Absolutely.
We grew up East Chicago, Gary, kind of the same background, but obviously people's lives take them to different places. So it's always interesting to me to meet different people and hear different stories, because one of the things I think that we're finding is people are so closed off now. They don't want to hear other sides of the story. They don't want to consider other opinions. And it's unfortunate because, no one should say, I've got it all figured out, right? One of the first things I always say, I have no idea what's going on. I want to hear people's opinions, and I want to bring that to the table and hear other stories. So, and one of the things I learned about with the media was anytime somebody I knew got written about, I usually reached out to them. I said, okay, well, what's the real story? What's the rest of the story? Because there's always more to it. And that's why, when I run into you, I said, when you're ready, I want to hear the rest of the story. Right.
Let me mention my son, because I'm going to bring up a controversial name right now, but we're not going to discuss it because we don't have that kind of time.
Right.
But when the news of Charlie Kirk getting shot hit the airwaves, it was my 21-year-old son who brought it to me.
Okay.
Because he'd gotten it. He's on social media. He'd gotten it first. And it was the reaction, the response, the initial response is what triggered me to make sure that even my own son is more compassionate, because born and raised in the household that he lives in, I consider myself not a liberal. I'm like in between.
Yeah. Most people consider themselves in the middle, right?
In the middle.
You're looking for a home at this point.
Absolutely,
right.
Because I'm a female athlete who believe that born female athletes should only compete against each other.
Right.
Because if, there's a fellow named Teuton that I grew up with, and that's the name. He played football for Lew Wallace, right?
Okay.
I wouldn't want him throwing the shot put on my track team,
right?
Because he beat everybody. Okay, if he decided that, and I know Teuton, I love you, that wouldn't be fair, you know. So because of those types of issues, I consider myself more of a center.
Well, and again, it's sort of the idea of, when you come to rational conclusions, it's hard to find a home in this society, right? It's hard to find a political home.
Absolutely.
When you're having these sort of, and I was talking earlier, the idea about one of the biggest problems of politics is, if you are a Democrat or Republican, you basically have to go along with.
Yeah.
And I've always said, we need to be our harshest critics.
Absolutely.
Democrats should be, pushing other Democrats. Is this the right path forward? Republicans, us libertarians love to fight with libertarians.
Right.
We love to argue about things. And it's always the question of, there are certain things with the parties where they say it's been decided, it's off limits. And I'm sure there's been times when you've been told this is how it's going to be. And then certain people, I know someone like you get told, here's how it's going to be. Like, no. There's room for discussion here.
There's room for discussion.
Right.
So my son's initial response was a chuckle. It was a giggle. Because he disagreed with Charlie Kirk's point of view.
And that was a lot of social media was sort of that reaction, right?
Mine was a gasp.
Right.
Because, oh my gosh, this was a human being.
Right.
I disagreed with most of what he said, but in America, we still have the right to say what we want to say, barring, screaming fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
without impunity.
Right.
Okay, so being able to speak your mind, and let's circle back to politics. If you're a part of a political party and a part of an administration, especially like I was as parks director in the city of Gary, you can't speak your mind. You are under the authority of that elected official that hired you or who hired you. And so when our story came out, let's go back to, okay.
So why don't we,
what happened?
We're going to take a break in a little bit. So why don't why don't we, before you get too far into that, let's take a break, because unlike podcasts, I don't get to go 3 hours straight. So we have to take a break, pay some bills. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more after this.
Absolutely.
.46 here in the region. We've got Levita Sparks Wade here because Bob is at a meeting, at one of his many government meetings. So he took the day off, and I saw Levita. I said, well, why don't you come on and we'll talk about some things and catch up. And because I know it's been a while since you used to come on. We came on a couple times and we were talking about the train issues and things like that. That's when we really got to know each other. Because I always, whenever I find somebody that's kind of an outsider on these things, like, come on, let's talk about it, and let's talk to some people about these things. But so we were talking about, so you mentioned sort of your son's reaction to Charlie Kirk. I think that's an interesting topic. We've talked about that quite a bit for the last couple of weeks here, but go ahead, carry on with that story.
Yeah, so I knew that I had to do some more work with my son because he is engaged in regards to politics.
Okay.
And I don't want him as a leader in the next generation thinking that it's okay to celebrate death in any regard. So, again, that was a difficult time. This is a difficult time in American history. And we've got work to do with our young people.
Well, right. And so that was one of the discussions. A lot of that discussion was the reaction to it. And I think one of the things I was telling a lot of people was, think deeper than that act. Think about action reaction. I mean, even I talked about as somebody who does this for a living or somebody who is in politics, you don't want to have, I said, with the day that happened, you know, I always, when you talk politics, you always feel like there's a target on your back. My target got bigger that day, right?
Yes.
And it doesn't matter if you're on the left or right or libertarian. Even a lot of people on the left, on podcasters, you know, a lot of them are saying, look, this isn't good for anybody. This is because action reaction. Now I've got a target on my back. Now everybody that does this has a target on their back.
Yes.
Even I ran into some, you know, we had like Wickedly Whiting this weekend. Politicians all have an extra bodyguard walking around with them.
Yeah.
Everybody is, and it's not a good place to be because like you said, if we want to have discussion, if we want to move dialogue forward, it can't be everyone afraid of getting fired, of being canceled,
Yes.
of being shot because we have an opinion.
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that really, I think that if anything comes out of this, I think it's the idea of, you know, people keep talking about the temperature, whether you're talking about Charlie Kirk or what's happening in Chicago today or things like that, that temperature and that action reaction. We were talking earlier about, you know, CNN and Fox News. For years and years, it was always alerts flying across the screen, breaking news, and people's just got your blood pressure up, and it got you in a bad headspace, right?
Yes.
And I think that's a lot of it is it's negatively affecting us. Like even this idea of doom scrolling on TikTok and hearing nothing but bad news, or even today, whenever somebody loses their life, it seems like there's 5 minutes later you can watch footage of Charlie Kirk, or you know what happened in Charlotte. I mean, all of these stories, it's like you just, here's the footage of it happening.
Yes.
And I don't think humans were really designed to see that
No,
much
we weren't.
death and destruction.
We weren't.
Right?
We weren't. So
Yeah.
let me go to how I went from Gary to Hammond and back again.
Okay.
Okay. So after I worked on the election, on the McDermott for Congress in 2020, and as you well know, he was not successful. In that election, we have Congressman Mervan serving in that spot right now, and you know, we were kind of tossing ideas around and whatnot, and Mayor Tom offered me a position over in the city of Hammond.
Okay,
and so I was in Hammond for 4 years, and then I get a call from Markel Watkins, and he wanted me to meet with. He says, Eddie wants to meet with you.
Okay.
It's like, okay, cool. So we had lunch or whatever, and Eddie asked me to come and work on his campaign, his mayoral campaign. And that was a year prior to the election even getting started. And I was like, yes, you know, because Eddie and I have always been cordial. I wouldn't call him a friend. I would call him, you know, a political associate.
Okay.
And so, you know, we met a couple times, and he came and got me from Hammond. I didn't go to Eddie. Eddie came to me.
Okay.
Okay. We won the election, as you very well know. During the course of that election, I believe that I had a great deal of influence with people because people believe me when I talk. And that is because I base my assignment in politics on the Word of God. We all have something to do, something creative to do, something to dominate in an area of what God put us here for.
As I know pastors say, get in where you fit in where you get in,
That's
get in where
right.
you fit in, right?
Absolutely. And so my area of domination is in the area of politics. It's what God put in me. I didn't put it here. I would rather not do politics because it's so very...
It's draining. Yeah.
It is, but I love it. And so we worked on that campaign. During the course of that election, it was a brutal campaign. During times where, for instance, their operatives sent out a letter a mailed letter to residents in the Miller area of allegations of inappropriate behavior from Eddie, right? I defended Eddie the entire time. Regardless of what was happening, I was defending Eddie. I would pull up actual, I never sling mud. I only sling facts. So I'll pick up issues like the Genesis Center.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was the one that initially dropped the photos of what the Genesis Center looked like.
Yeah.
Exactly. It doesn't look like that now because we went in and cleaned it up.
Okay.
Okay. And put the dog system, the DAWG system, up there to protect the center at this point. But I initially dropped those pictures. Those pictures went viral. They were everywhere.
Right.
And they called me and asked me to drop them. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how politics works.
Right.
You always have to have that pit bull, and I have no problem being that pit bull as long as it's facts.
But also, like you said, it wasn't salacious. It was the facts. The pictures don't lie.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Here's what we have. Here's what's going on.
Exactly. So those were the types of things that I was doing during the course of the election, as well as letting people know that well, you know what? I'm not even going to go into that because we don't have that kind of time. In any event, the Prince team then started to try to denigrate me. Okay. And they posted memes about me. They weren't posting memes about anybody except Levita Sparks Wade. Okay.
You should be honored at that point, right?
I must be effective, right? Even had one of my friends, they called one of my friends and offered them $1,000 to go on the radio on WLTH to talk bad about me.
Wow.
That's how bad it got. Okay. So we win the election, right? When I met with Eddie in regards to him offering me a job, I initially wanted chief of staff because I have the qualifications for it.
Makes sense, right?
Right. Well, he gave that position to his best friend, Ellis Dumas. And I didn't know at that time that there was a position called Chief Operating Officer that he eventually gave to Mike Suggs. And, I didn't even see Mike Suggs on the campaign trail at all. Now, he might have been doing something behind the scenes, but I never saw Mike Suggs on the campaign trail. And in politics, this is one of the things that as elected officials, people give their lives to you for 1-2 years, okay, depending upon what that particular position is. If it's running for a federal position, you're going to give at least 2 years on the campaign trail. That's not a gift. I sacrifice time with family. I sacrifice time with my job. I take vacations. I take time off to make sure that we get this done. And I'm the type of person, I give you everything that I got. Okay.
No, I saw you out there working.
So when you offer a position, it is supposed to line up with the work that the people did on your campaign. And so, so that was, okay, slap in the face, but I'm good. So I was parks director. When I went into the parks department, the very first day on the job, I hadn't even seen my office. And the HR director at the time, her name was Marionetta Barber. Marionetta came to me and said, "Hey, you have an issue before you get over there." Okay.
It's your first day.
It's my first day. I hadn't even signed it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I went over there, and there was an HR issue that I had to deal with that I ended up initiating progressive discipline on 3 park employees. Okay. And from that day on, I was behind. Okay.
Do you feel like that was by design, or do you feel like that was just So I guess here's my question: as somebody who grew up in Gary, who's been involved in it, where do you think when you first came in, or even in your time in council, how did you feel about the direction that the city was going in? Or I guess one of the things I've always been curious about is what has sort of been the handicaps of Gary? What is keeping people talk about, obviously with Mayor Melton, there's a lot of hopes. We always talk about, well, this is, things are moving forward, but it always seems like there's a lot handicapping the city in the background, even like what you talked about with the Parks Department. And I know just sort of seeing behind the scenes of, keeping the parks clean for parks, keeping them clean and running and safe.
Yes.
That's just a big job unto itself,
and
right?
you can't. Gary has 56 parks.
Wow.
Gary has, I want to say, 35 parks that are operable.
Okay.
Okay. Somewhere around there. Don't quote me on that. That are maintained. And those other 21, they say they allowed to go back to nature,
right,
if you will. And let me just speak specifically about the Parks Department, because this is indicative of what has happened with Gary.
It's like a microcosm of what's happening.
Absolutely,
okay,
absolutely. Right. So we only had 6 workers to maintain 35 parks.
Wow.
And we're talking about cutting. We're talking about, we never get to the actual edging and the beautifying.
Right.
Because they're just going from park to park.
Or even just keeping looking for glass or anything, keep it safe for the kids, looking for problems.
Absolutely. And so we had in 2001, 2002, some 20-some odd years ago, a park called MC Bennett Park on 25th and Grant Street, where now it sits a Walgreens and a Fresh County Market. They established a TIF district right there. Well, when they decided to put a TIF district and do that development, that park was a park that was developed by federal funds called the Land Water Conservation Fund, LWCF. Okay? As a result, when you develop a park with LWCF funding, it has to remain a park forever.
Right. Makes sense.
So that land was never replaced with other land. And so for 24 years, the city of Gary had been out of compliance with the federal government, unable to apply for that type of funding again.
So they missed out.
Yeah, and so they missed out because of that.
Right.
Jim Nowacki, God bless him. I love Jim. We have differing opinions, but hey, he's a warrior for the city of Gary.
Right.
He talked about it all the time. So that was one of my main priorities, was to bring us back into compliance with LWCF. I got with the redevelopment director, Christopher Harris. He had started working with the previous parks director in regards to that. And we identified land that could replace the value of the land that was taken from MC Bennett Park. We had to secure what they call a yellow book appraiser. We secured a yellow book appraiser. We got those appraisals done. We made sure that we had our annual plan together, a five-year plan together, and I was bringing us back into compliance and had submitted all of that paperwork. So when we are in compliance, then it will be because of the work that I was able to get done in spite of everything that was going on.
So I want to get into, we do have to take a break, so I do want to get into that, because that's another interesting aspect of government, is compliance and filings.
Absolutely.
And so much paperwork. And again, it's one thing if you're in compliance to keep it going, it's another thing to come into a job and be out of compliance.
Absolutely.
And then you spend all that time again playing catch up. So let's take a break. We'll catch up. So you're listening to Summer of Chuck here on AM 1230, 104.7 FM in beautiful Hammond, Indiana. We'll be back with more after this. Hey, it's 8:04 in the region. You're listening to Summer of Chuck 2, the Electric Boogaloo. We've got my old friend Levita Sparks-Wade here in the house. We have the best conversations on the break, so
yes,
we got to save it for the show. But so let's take a quick look at traffic and weather. So we had an earlier incident on westbound 8094 at Calumet. Looks like for the most part that's been cleaned up, but that had some earlier traffic issues. We were talking about there was an issue inbound Dan Ryan at about at 55 at the Stevenson, and it's got things backed up. So the Dan Ryan's been a mess all morning. So if you're heading downtown, even taking the Skyway is not going to help you because the backup starts at the Stevenson, works all the way back. Other than that, things looking good here in Indiana. Things looking good like on 294 or around the city. Everything looking good other than that trip downtown on the Dan Ryan. Let's take a look at weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 67 degrees. We'll be having highs of 84 and lows of 61, with sun followed by increasing clouds with a thunderstorm and some spots from late morning on. Should be very warm today, and later tonight should be mostly cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow and Tuesday we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 51. Should be cooler with a shower in some spots in the morning and then clouds and sunshine in the afternoon. And then Wednesday we'll be having highs of 64 and lows of 42, and should be mostly sunny.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So enjoy that last 80-degree day because it will be fall before you know it. So, Levita, we were talking about this because I think this is the part, here on WJOB, it's a constant discussion. We're always talking about what's going on in Gary. We're always talking about the latest project, if it's the airport or the train or something like that. And people tell you it'll be transformational and all this stuff. And that's always been sort of my issue is I think at a certain point people are tired of being promised things that doesn't get delivered on, right? And that's sort of the frustrating thing is at the end of the day, you're the one that pays for these things. You're being promised, even at the airport, they promised us you'd be able to fly to Florida.
Yes.
And they keep promising Florida. They keep spending money at the airport and I still can't go to Florida, right? Or the train or anything like that. But one of the things we were talking about before the break, and I think this is what gets lost on a lot of people that are kind of just saying, okay, well, we keep saying it's Gary's time, but it takes time, right? And I think one of the things is this idea of there's so much when it comes to running a city, when it comes to running a government agency, there's so much just sort of bureaucracy, red tape, like you said, being in compliance, something as simple as getting a grant. You find out you weren't even there. I wasn't there 20 years ago when this happened, and now I got to figure out how to fix us to get us back in compliance. There's all these things that need to happen administratively just to get to the point where you start doing your job.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like you're in charge of the park. People, why aren't you fixing the park? We've got so much paperwork to do just to get people hired, just to get money to fix the parks, and there's just so much on the back end. I remember, I don't know if you were probably around, I remember when Gary first started getting the casino money.
Yes.
Do you know what they did with that? Do you remember that? They started rebuilding all the parks. And I was there working on a lot of the parks. And the frustrating thing was, for a short time, it was very nice. But it was also funny because I remember building, I'll tell you a funny story. We were in one of the parks, we were building, we redid the tennis courts. Mm-hmm. And I was look at the park's looking great, everything. We're going from park to park. And a little old lady came up to me and she said, "Do you see anybody playing tennis around here?"
Right, exactly.
And I go, "Well, I just do my job." But again, at the end of the day, it's like we're spending so much money building a tennis court that's probably overgrown now.
Exactly.
That could have been used otherwise. But also one of the frustrating things you saw was there were people behind the scenes that didn't want that progress. Mm-hmm. So you would see, I knew people that would spend time beautifying a park and then somebody would set it on fire, right?
Yes.
And so that one person took all that away from the children, took all that away from the neighbor. One person, for whatever reason, whether it was to keep, maybe they were dealing drugs there and they didn't want kids there, whatever was going on, that was the story I always heard, was they said we would keep the kids out of the parks because that's where we deal drugs or and so one person or one group of people would ruin it for everybody.
Right. So let me tell you about that piece as well, and then I'm going to go ahead into the newspaper articles.
I said be patient, we're going to get there.
We are going to get there.
It takes a while to get there.
So I learned, I'm wondering why none of our pools were open. Mm-hmm. We have several pools in the city of Gary. None of them were open. Come to find out, even the one at Tolleson, everybody wants the water park back. Mm-hmm. Impossible, because it will cost more to repair that than it would to build new.
Wow.
And that is because our pools were not properly winterized.
And so the pipes all burst and
Pipes all
everything
burst.
everything underground needs to be replaced.
Exactly. So when that type of neglect occurs, it takes years
Right.
to get that back. And
Right.
so let me go into
ahead.
when
Yeah.
I first started, my first day on the job, even prior to my first day on the job. This is a copy of the contract that I signed.
Okay.
Eddie and I sat down, we talked, we negotiated for a salary. I started one place, he started another place. We ended up at that place at $80,000.
Okay.
Okay. The previous
Right here on paper. I'm reading it. You take my word for it, but it's here. Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
So the previous parks director made like $68,000.
Okay.
And she was a 20-something-year-old with a bachelor's degree, I think she had. I'm a 50-something-year-old. I think I might have even turned 60 at that time. Yeah, I am 60. Look at that.
Yeah, time flies,
Okay,
right?
it does.
That just means your experience.
Absolutely, and that's
You
the
have the
difference.
experience,
I
right?
have the experience. I have a master's degree, and as we well know, black women have more advanced degrees than anybody in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but we don't get paid
Okay.
for
Right.
that knowledge. We're considered a DEI hire. Okay, which is another conversation.
That's
I can
another.
come
Okay,
back
you have
to
to come
one
back
day,
in a few weeks. Yes.
But believe me, how many times have I been passed over just because of my name on my resume or my address?
Okay.
Okay, I don't even know, but I do know sometimes that the person that got the job ahead of me, one person in particular that I'm looking at right now in my visual vortex, did not have a bachelor's degree, did not have the experience on the job, but she was a white female and got the job ahead of me. Okay. As you can see, that still,
I
triggers me.
Sure.
Okay. So again, we don't make the same amount of money. So I'm trying to just not even get what I'm worth, because I'm worth way more than 80 grand. The parks director here in the city of Hammond makes six figures.
Okay.
Okay. He has a lot of experience. I like Jim. Great guy. Okay. In any event, we get to the council meeting.
Okay.
Where they're now doing the amendments. Okay. They're doing the legislation for the budget to change. Okay. So Eddie has presented these budgets, the new budget. Everybody got what they signed for except me. Ty Atkins, who was the president at the time, offered an amendment to reduce the $80,000 to $70,000.
Wow. Okay.
And it passed.
Okay.
A couple people, abstained from voting because they thought that they were keeping the sanctity of their relationship with the mayor. Others, Linda Barnes Caldwell, for instance, was one who sort of led the charge. Okay. And so I'm upset about that. But Eddie calls me. He says, "Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay. I'm going to fix that for you."
Well, here. So let me ask why. So it sounds like you feel that you were singled out.
Oh, I know I was
it
singled
because
out.
of you, or is it because of the
of me.
Okay.
It's because of me.
So you think it was like a retribution?
Oh,
thing?
absolutely, without a doubt.
Okay.
Without
when
a
again,
doubt.
and this goes back to that story of when we play politics, who gets hurt? The
absolutely.
children, right? The children are the ones.
The children get hurt, and watch this, and my family gets hurt.
Right.
Okay. So during the course of the election, that was a city election, and so I'm calling out these people that Eddie is supporting, including Ty Atkins, including Linda Barnes Caldwell. So much so that one of my relatives calls me afterward and say, I don't like Linda Barnes Caldwell. Well, I said, that's politics.
Right.
She's on the team. We're having a kumbaya moment and whatnot. Because I was told in politics there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. Okay?
I like that one. I like that. No, that's a good one. Yeah.
So anyway, Eddie's fix for this was the supplemental of $8,000 from the summer youth employment program.
Okay.
Now, when you're a salaried employee, you work day and night.
You put in 60 hours at a minimum.
My
Sure.
goodness.
No, I get it.
all day, all night, all weekend.
Right.
I'm going to the beach after church to check on the ticket takers. That's how vested I was. I'm waking up at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, drafting grants, writing emails, responding to memos, all of that. Okay, so they wanted me to document
all the paperwork before you even start your day.
Before you start your day, exactly.
Yeah, right.
So the only reason why they were tripping on this was because the former HR director, Marionetta Barber, was also dismissed. And when she got dismissed because of whatever reason that Eddie and his people came up with, she then retaliated by reporting the $8,000 supplemental. So that's the only reason why they even knew about it, because it is within the mayor's purview to decide whether or not he wants to give whatever salary to whom. And he doesn't have to say it was in the budget. He doesn't have to say who gets that particular piece of the budget. In any event, the work that I did with the youth for the summer is documented. The youth knew me. They knew if they had a problem, they were to come to me. We did the work, just period.
Right.
And we did the work because there's no investigation. Nobody reprimanded me. I didn't sign off on my own salary. You can't go into this. That's one thing that you can't do. You can't go into the system and approve your own.
Right. Checks and balances. We have some checks and balances.
Checks and balances are there. Absolutely. And so not only did Eddie tell me, but also Salita Green, who is the controller, and Ellis Dumas, the chief of staff, both came to me and said, hey, this is how Eddie is going to fix this for you. As a matter of fact, I got a text message that I also printed out from Eddie when they were talking about this at the city council meeting.
Okay.
And I asked him if he needed me to be at that meeting. What does he say?
He said, don't worry, I got you.
He says, I got
you.
Okay, so when the newspaper articles come out, I'm wondering why he don't have me like he says that he does, because he said absolutely nothing. Okay, so then we get to harassment.
Okay.
Complaints. Let's talk about that for a second. Unless you had something to say about.
No. I wanted to take a look at. So basically, I want to look at what the newspaper wrote about you.
Yes.
So you're telling the story, and then we're also looking at what the papers are writing about you and what the people heard.
Exactly.
Which is why you're here today.
Exactly. And you remember that saying, the thing about the truth is you don't have to remember it.
Right.
Okay. Don't have to remember the truth.
But sometimes you don't even hear it.
Sometimes you don't even hear it. And that is the problem. Okay. So I hired a young lady as my administrative assistant. She was working at the front desk of City Hall. And somebody referred her to me. I needed an administrative assistant because mine quit, without warning. And this is what young people do nowadays.
They just send you text. I'm done.
You know what I'm saying? I don't even get a text.
Right. I hear that from everybody.
Okay.
They stop showing up and that's it.
And this young lady was a young lady as well. And she told me her story about her domestic violence. So she, of course, tugging at my heartstrings, and she's got children and whatnot. So I give her the highest paying job she's ever had in her life, with no degree, no skills, none of that, okay? But she was working at the front desk. She had a pleasant personality. I can teach you the rest of the stuff.
If you can show up on time and put your phone down, and again, that's private sector is the same way. Everybody tells me the same thing. If you have a young person that is engaged and can communicate and is ready to work, I'll take you. I'll take you any day of the week.
I'll take you.
Right.
She didn't show up.
Okay.
She didn't show up on time. She didn't even come the first day on the job, okay? And I get a text message, hey, I had something to happen with my kids. Okay, all right. I'm as compassionate as I am. I let it go, okay? And we're working with a young lady who has zero work ethic. Come to find out, she has a sheet as long as both of my arms. But, matter of fact, she might be in jail right now for resisting law enforcement and fighting with the police officer.
Well, just say allegedly, because allegedly.
My bad.
Yeah,
for allegedly fighting with the police officer. But those are the charges right now. Okay, and this young lady, again, didn't show up for work. when I finally terminated her, it was because of whatever it was. I don't have time to go into the story, but this is what she did to my office after I terminated her. That's what my office looked like. It didn't start that way. Everything that was on the desk.
Looks like somebody who had a fit. Like somebody in a bad mood.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of them. The other young lady was the manager of the Hudson Campbell. Again, no work ethic. People call me complaining about the bathroom isn't clean and the gym isn't clean and the bleachers are not working properly and that sort of thing, right? So in one instance, I tell her, I said, look, I go down to the tennis courts. We do have tennis courts in Hudson Campbell. So in the winter, it's great. You know, those of you who want to play tennis in the wintertime, you can go over to Hudson Campbell. There were sheddings from the tennis balls all over the court.
That hadn't been cleaned in a long time then. Yeah.
And okay, so let's take care of this.
Yeah.
And she gives me what we call a stank look, okay?
Yeah.
I'm telling you to do your job. You don't have to do it. You have somebody else who is responsible for cleaning to take care of it. So what they did was they blew the sheddings against the wall and didn't sweep it up.
That's halfway there. Okay.
Okay.
But then you got to do the rest.
So
of it.
as I'm trying to hold them accountable, another young man who worked at Hudson Campbell, they had the office door open. Office is nasty. Nasty so much so one time he had a plate of food in the back office that he left over the weekend.
Yeah.
So we've got gnats and bugs and everything crawling around. Clean the office. He goes over to HR, bangs on the wall, crying. I'm sick of her. She always trying to embarrass me in front of people. And this is the type, another young person under the age of 40 who does not have work ethic.
Well, and it's almost like, and again, this is not unique to the public sector. I talk to folks, and it's like my job is to be your manager, not your mother, not your father. And the idea of now you add that with this younger generation, to clean up after yourself, carry yourself. You can't just things that. Going back to your point earlier about retributions, like some people need tough love,
right?
But in this world, sometimes tough love and HR don't mesh well, but sometimes you're getting that tough love for a reason. So, okay.
I could have initiated progressive discipline on everybody.
Right.
Okay. I decided I want to work with these young people because they obviously haven't been taught.
Right.
So I'm going to teach you.
Right.
What you are supposed to be doing in the workplace.
The tough love that you may not have ever gotten before.
Exactly.
And they didn't handle it well,
and
right?
They did not handle it well.
Yeah.
And so, again, no investigation. Mike Suggs comes to me one day and he says, hey, I'm getting ready to put you on administrative leave because some of the things that I'm hearing is what he said. And I went on administrative leave. Next thing I know, he called me on the phone and terminated me. I've yet to have a conversation with the mayor. The mayor did not respond to my phone call or my text message. And I have yet to have an investigation on these so-called harassment charges.
But you really didn't even have not an investigation, but not even, like you talk about progressive discipline or write-ups or anything. No due process.
No due process.
But again, that is their right to do, whether it's fair or not. But again, you have somebody in here that's trying to get it done.
Absolutely. Buying a house, move. Now, again, that goes back to the first thing that I said. I didn't come to Eddie. Eddie came and got me.
Right.
I was in a stable job. I was doing just fine.
Right.
Okay. Now you have disrupted my life. You have caused harm to come to my family. I'm buying a house and you knew I was buying a house.
Right.
So now my car note, my house note, my NIPSCO bill. Okay. And that is not indicative. And this is what, people say that they're Christians.
Mm-hmm. Right. Everybody can say they're Christian.
And don't demonstrate the love that Christians are supposed to have towards one another. Okay. Now, if you can't look me in my eye and tell me what it is you're terminating me for,
Right.
then you have the problem. I don't have the problem.
But again, even the idea of putting it out in the public like that,
yes,
that
and
does
leaving
harm
it
to you. And that's
Absolutely.
one of the things that I always talk about is people get harmed because Google doesn't go away.
No,
right?
it
And this is
doesn't.
one of the things is this
Yes.
permanently harms your ability. And and that's one of the frustrating things is something that may have been a personality disagreement or a process. We don't agree with the way you're doing. That's fine. I'll go somewhere else where they do
Absolutely.
appreciate what I'm doing. But now you've affected my life.
And that's the very first thing that comes up when you Google my name.
Right. Right.
Okay. Other than my Facebook, the next thing you see is an article that indicates or puts in the minds of people
Right.
that I did something wrong.
Right.
And they did nothing to try to rectify that. Absolutely nothing. And wouldn't allow me at the time. So I wanted to make sure. I came here and I'm here several months later because of my name.
Right.
The Bible says a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. And you scandalized my name. Whether or not you ever see, because I haven't even seen Eddie, because I didn't want to react. I wanted to be able to respond.
Right.
And respond in the way that I was over the grief.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because losing a job is a traumatic event.
Right.
And so I wanted to make sure that I wasn't angry or frustrated or retaliatory. And I still feel the same way. I'm not angry anymore. Okay? But I still feel the same way that I felt when it first happened. This is wrong.
Right.
And in no way and in no universe can you ever show me that this was right.
Well, and I'm gonna put it out there because when I first read about this, I said, no way. No way, because again, I know you. I said,
Yes.
I knew right away, here's a woman that put in 80 hours a week and cares enough about her community that your goal was to help the children. I said, I don't know if this is like politics, a misunderstanding, whatever it was. And so I'm putting it out there as someone who knows you've known you for a long time, that you love the community. And even, maybe Parks Director wasn't the job you wanted, but you were going to take it and you were going to do what you needed to do because it's a great opportunity to help the community, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's unfortunate because we keep talking about, whether you're talking about Gary or anything else, pushing things forward and it's Gary's time. Well, there's all these little pieces, and having functional parks, having a working pool.
Yes.
All these things are part of that.
Absolutely.
Right? And I mean, again, you can't have a community. We always talk about infrastructure. You talk about those broken pipes. Infrastructure isn't sexy. People don't talk about it until the water isn't working or the sewer's broken. But again, all these little things. And one of the problems with politics is we love our ribbon cuttings. We love, here's the new train. But then the pipes underneath us are failing and the parks are falling apart. And so again, what this story keeps coming back to for me is, here's a woman that was going to give it her all to help the parks and help the children and create a safe environment, and politics got in the way of that. And once again, who was harmed? The children.
Exactly.
Right? We always joke about it's always for the children, but in this case, it's a perfect example of you were there to help the children.
Absolutely.
And get things on track, do the paperwork, fill out the grants, and it's unfortunate that it worked out this way because they're the ones that suffer, right?
Absolutely.
We have a couple more minutes before Dr. Janet Seabrook comes in, so if you have any final thoughts or anything like that.
Dr. Janet.
Yeah, so
she and I went to undergrad together.
Okay. Absolutely,
at Tuskegee. Wonderful.
So did you hit everything? You want to hit anything else in the last couple minutes?
Let me go back to Lakeisha Mosley, because this young lady, I don't know if I said her name before, but I'm saying it now. The harm that she caused was supported by the administration in that they let me hire her. They were afraid of a lawsuit that I had offered her the job pending approval from the administration. So they could have got off with that, but they saw her as a problem employee.
Send her your way.
Yeah, send her my way, because she had caused problems in other departments. Okay. This young lady called herself taking a protective order out against me. For several months after that, I had to go to court. And when I finally got an opportunity to present my information to the court, of course, they dismissed the whole thing.
Right.
But it is and it is incumbent upon us to make sure, and I'm going to end with this, to make sure that when we have people in place who are loyal to us as an elected official or as the CEO of a company, loyal to us and doing the work.
Right.
You got to protect those people.
Right.
You have to protect those people. But, Chuck, I am so free right now.
I can see it. I can see it. I can see.
It was liberating at the same time. And I'm able to do my own thing. I'm getting ready to do a podcast. So everybody, y'all been seeing my hashtag Spark Speaks. Mm-hmm. So, it might be a tongue twister.
You know where to find me if you need help getting that studio built.
Absolutely.
So,
see?
But thank you so much for coming on.
you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate what you said about, I said, when you were ready, come on. And you said, I want to come on because I know that I'll have the opportunity to speak the truth and get my story out. So I appreciate that you came on. I'm glad that we had this time together. And I see that, again, it's unfortunate because I know you're somebody that really wanted to give it her all to the community. And sometimes there's this disconnect between the people that want to serve and the people that want to politic, right?
Absolutely.
And it's unfortunate.
Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the station. Jim, tell him I said hey.
You got it.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week. We've got Dr. Janet Seabrook will be here in just a few minutes.